Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the summit. I have to admit, I'm ecstatic about welcoming our next guest. Not only he's a personal friend, he's known as the Trust Architects. And for people that know my work, they'll know how exciting it is every time I get to introduce someone by their unified message. Not only has he authored 5 books and is he an executive coach, he has spoken on some amazing stages for some amazing organizations. And just like me, he's very much still an emerging speaker. I mean, if you've been in the industry for 10, 15 years, you still remember what it was like to get started, and you still have that little hustle about yourself to make sure that every gig turns into another gig. So he's on the ground, absolutely doing the work day to day. And he's actually only doing this interview right now before he hustles off to Ford to do a presentation himself for another amazing audience. And I know, Justin, well, firstly, welcome to the show, mate. I'm ecstatic to have you.
Thank you, Matthew. Appreciate it. I'm glad to be here with all of you.
Just as we said that, I remembered in my head the conversation we had last time about the last time you presented at Ford. And I just had a little laugh to myself, and we might talk about some of those kind of lessons learned. But you and I, let's face it, perhaps you a little bit more than me. We both look 12 years old, and yet we speak in audiences that have got 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, and we want to be taken seriously. And I know for a lot of the people that are listening, they're like, I want to establish myself in the speaking world. You know, how do I even get started with that? I mean, a lot of people are like, 5 books. My gosh, do I have to do 5 books just to get started? Like, what advice would you give to that emerging speaker that's really just starting to get their feet on the ground?
I remember when I had first started, I was one of those speakers that was doing the full-time job, part-time speaking on the side. I did that for about 3 to 4 years, but I had a mentor, took me to Starbucks. We were having some coffee, and he looks at me and he goes, Justin, what do you want to be an expert in? And Matthew, no one in my entire career had ever asked me that question. And he goes, listen, I know you're not an expert today, but he goes, when Ford or Fifth Third or all these Google or Amazon, when these big companies have a problem, they want to go to the go-to person. And he goes, what are you going to be the go-to person for? And all of a sudden, he allowed me to dream bigger. And so I would tell, for me, that started, I didn't start out with trust, so we'll get there, but it started out around body language. My company was called Bodylytics. I studied body language from this lady in the FBI. And so what happened was he gave me a lens to kind of target my messaging and to get known for something. Because a lot of speakers, let's face it, most people don't know what we speak on, right? And you need to get known for something. And so what happened is when I chose my topic, then all of my development, everything that I posted really became targeted towards that. So I would say that for any speakers early on, what do you want to be known for and how do you go all in on that topic?
So that's scary though, Justin, for a lot of people that are listening, because the fact is they just want to speak at events, and any speaking event might be for them a really good opportunity. So they're like, well, I can speak on time management. I can speak on small business growth. And so they find themselves trying to be a chameleon because they're like, well, what do you speak on? Well, what do you want me to speak on? So how did you find, like, a lot of times when perhaps people came to you and said, well, we would like to consider you to speak at an event, these are the kind of topics we're looking for, and trust wasn't even on the list. Like, did you try to mold yourself? Did you feel like you should, or did you kind of sell them to what it is you wanted to deliver?
I think early on, I did try to do anything, because my first 4 years, it was about just speaking as much as possible. But I was also a trainer. So that's the background I came from. So I was teaching all these crazy topics, right? But I finally got to a point where I had to say, if I was going to do this for a business, like, what is it that I want? I didn't want to teach time management. There's nothing wrong with that, but that wasn't my jam. It didn't make my heart sing, right? And so I had to say, what is the topic that if I could only speak on this kind of forever would be the thing that would really feel like I'm doing something purposeful with my life, and also the message that I really believed in. And so that did take time to find. And I'll also say this, I think the only reason it's scary for people is because they feel like they can't change it. I've never felt that way. I always gave myself to the ability to evolve my dream, to grow it up. And so I never felt stuck. If anything, it just gave me direction.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. You know, it's interesting. for the first 5 years, I had one keynote, like just one. And people would call and ask me if I could speak on a specific topic, or they'd email me. And I'm like, yes, absolutely, I can speak on that. Like, let's set up a time to have a conversation. And then I would ask a few questions. I'm like, actually, you know what? Based on what you said, I actually think this would be far better for you. So I'm happy to speak on this if you'd like. But I actually have this other topic that I think would provide. And they're like, you know what? That's a really good idea. And they feel like they were part of that kind of development process. And I agree with you. It's about having a topic that makes your heart sing. And I feel like this is a really important and critical point, especially for you. Like, I have seen on your LinkedIn profile, I mean, when you speak at an event, it's not like they get value from, well, I mean, they do get value from your content, of course, but you almost look like you're part of those people's families. I mean, they're giving you big hugs, you know, they're enjoying the festivities with you. And it's because you've really built this rapport around this topic. So I'd love for you to talk about the fact that, like, as a speaker, especially in this new world, if you can just nail it on stage, is that enough? Or have you found that there's more to building a really successful recurring speaking business?
Yeah. So this is going to go into kind of what happened after year 5 in my business. First 4 years, it was just about passion. Go out there, speak as much as possible, have fun. I realized at a certain point, I wasn't running a strategic business. And I think there's a difference between just speaking a lot, go have fun, which is great, versus if I'm going to run the quote, the business side of things, what do I need to do differently? And listen, I'm biased here. I am a huge fan of that book, The Referable Speaker. I think every speaker should have to read that book. But the whole premise of it, right, was if people aren't coming up to you afterwards saying, we need that, what else do you do? It's just not good enough. That was very humbling for me, but I took that to heart. And so I think, here's the thing. I think every speaker, if you really want to own a professional speaking business, being good on stage is the bare minimum. I think you have to be good on stage. And so what allowed me to get the reoccurring contracts a lot with a lot of clients that I have is, one is I knew how to turn one touch point into multiple touch points. The last 10 years, that has served me better than anything else. So let me give you an example. So one touch point's the keynote, right? But then I might follow up and I'll say in 30 to 45 days, I'll do a free 30-minute Q&A webinar with everyone after the conference. Check in with you. How's it going? What's it doing? So the thing that I knew about me as a speaker is I can outvalue other speakers. I know how to add so much value to that client where other speakers are going to go in, do their event, leave and go home. But I want a relationship with you. I want to make change. I want to have impact. And that has served me more than not. I send a happy birthday postcard to my clients. We do a recognition form where when we start contracting, they fill out a form. What's their favorite things? I did a huge keynote for this client. She'd been, you know what it's like when they're at a week-long event. And I knew she loved Tiffany perfume. So I bought Tiffany perfume. So when she got home after that week-long event, it was there for her, just saying thank you for all that you did. I'm finding all these little ways to create authentic touch points with my client that's real and true to me. And I think those relationships on top of killing the keynote and crushing it is what it's allowed me to really grow the business the way that I have.
Yeah, I'll actually go even stronger to that point, because what I've noticed is when I was first speaking, and I mean, you and Ruby, who we also had on the summits, advice on, speak while working in a job, while you're getting that practice, because it's not a business until you turn it into a business. And when you're learning the craft is really valuable. But treating it like a business is so vitally important. I mean, I felt like there were events that I crushed, but I didn't do some of those little things that were meaningful. And there were two things that went from that. First one was that I didn't get the result from the recurring business that I would have liked. But the second was I didn't feel like I was part of the outcome as much as I would have liked. And I feel like the new breed, I'm gonna say the new breed of speakers, though I do know that there are a lot of older speakers that would fit into that new breed kind of ideology. The people that are willing to say, look, yes, I can come and speak, but truthfully, if you want entertainment, like go see Star Wars, hire a juggler. Like if I want to be part of that transformation, I want to be part of that result. And I think what you're really highlighting with that 30-minute Q&A later and doing, actually providing value and the reoccurrence is you're becoming part of, if you like, them structuring the architecture of trust inside their organization for their peers, their customers, and you're actually taking responsibility for the implementation. And I feel like a lot of speakers don't feel like that's their responsibility, right? Their job is to come in and do to be a speaker, and they'd only want to be a speaker. Like for those people that aren't an executive coach like you, or aren't a small business coach, or a corporate sales consultant like I am, what advice would you give to those people? Is that acceptable at this point, or is that them not taking enough responsibility, and help them navigate through that?
Listen, I think everyone gets to choose what type of business model they want, right? And I don't think there's one size fits all business model. Some people want to go in, do the keynote, crush it, leave, be done with it. That's okay if that's their model. I'll tell you what I learned. I thought I was going to go that way, and then COVID happened and all keynote speaking went away. And then I was like, I lucked out. And I realized luck is not a good business strategy. And what happened is I had all these long-term contracts that just went virtual. So financially, I was okay. But had I only done keynote speaking and not had those long-term contracts, it would have been a very different experience in my speaking business. So what I would say is, as you're growing the business, if you decide, hey, I just want to do keynote and just leave, that's a choice. I just think you will make it a little harder in certain periods of your business, where someone that gets to say, I want to offer this, a group coaching type thing, or I want to do a follow-up webinar, and you become more embedded. I think what happens is you give yourself a chance to at least get another gig with those people. They want to work with you again. So what happens is, instead of being hired for one keynote, maybe they hire you for 3 events that year. And it might not happen right away. I'm going to say this too. Every long-term contract that I've ever received started out because I killed the keynote. Every one of them. People are like, how do you get all these long-term contracts with GE Appliances and Ford and the NCAA? I'm like, y'all, I just killed the keynote. And what happened is they said, what else do you do? How can we keep this alive? I never went to someone and said, let me tell you all these offerings that I have. I got an opportunity, and then I made the opportunity count.
Yeah, I think that's important advice, because I also feel like you've got the needy speakers that are like, oh, I'll do the keynote, then I'll do this, and I'll do. They don't care until after you crush the keynote. So I also love the Q&A later. I do a strategy call afterwards around the implementation, because I know once I crush the keynote, that's going to be more of a, well, can we work with you and do all these other things as well? And I feel like that's what a lot of people are missing. It's, you've got to crush the keynote, yes, but that's an expectation. Like, it's a fail if you don't. And if you fail, you're not going to be invited to do anything. But if you do live up to the expectation, sadly, because so many people don't, that you get that opportunity, and you have to have a plan to do so.
Yeah. I want to transition. I want to share something real quick. You said I was getting ready to go to Ford. There was somebody here at Ford that gave me some great advice years ago when we started working together. They said to me, so many speakers make themselves the stars. He goes, you will change the game when you make the client the star. So let me give you an example of what we do. I used to, early in my career, we do a keynote, and then one of the things we offer, we give a free four email campaign series. They can drip out one a week for 4 weeks. But we used to send those out, and we're like, well, if we were making the client the star to their people, we would give the emails to the client and let the training team or the director of ops, whoever, let them send it out to their team, so that we're helping them be the star in their organization. And so it's stuff like that is where you sit back and say, how, as a speaker, do I help my client be a star to their own people? And then you're adding even more value, so then they're more likely to continue to work with you again.
I think that's really powerful. And I will stress for those people that are listening, like Justin and I, we both attended the CSP conference. Was it last year or the year before? Gosh, time flies.
It's been a while.
Yeah, I think it was. So the thing that was really interesting about that is, I mean, COVID was quite a few years ago now. And there was still some CSPs in that room that's entire business was decimated, and they'd gone back and got full-time jobs while they were really re-emerging as speakers again at a much older age, because they didn't have diversified businesses. Yep. And, I mean, there are some restaurants that had that same problem. They're like, oh, I'm not going to go and do deliveries, or I'm not going to do any of that. And they went broke. So you've got to decide whether or not this is a hobby or a real business. And once you've made that decision, then you may want to say, and a lot of people are scared of coaching, scared of consulting, wonder if they've got anything to offer. And the answer is you do, because when you speak on one topic, when you speak on 7 topics, it's far harder to become an expert. But what you heard Justin say, and what I've been able to do, is specialize and specialize and specialize. There's no one that knows my topic better, and there's no one that knows Justin's topic better. And that means he's not scared to make his client the hero because he knows they're always going to come back to him because he's the specialist. And because of that, he's been able to foster these long-term relationships.
Can I share what happened at CSP with us? So
yeah, absolutely.
So I just remember I did not know Matthew, and all of a sudden we're in line to get a glass of wine, and Matthew asked that line that I hate. They're like, "Hey, what do you talk on?" And of course, I was talking on trust at that time, so I just kind of said it very briefly. And Matthew looks at me and goes, "So you're a trust architect?" And I literally, all these light bulbs went off, and I go, "Consider that stolen." And I literally left that conversation, called my lawyer and said, "Go trademark it." But what that did was I was teaching my whole background had been body language, emotional intelligence, communication, but it gave me the umbrella, the overarching, kind of a way to talk about it that says, yeah, everything that I do is about helping people create trust in themselves and with others. And what we do in organizations is we know, based on our work, all of that work that I spent 10, 15 years, really doing is to really help them design a space or a culture of trust in an organization. But it was someone like you and being in a space, in a circle with other people that you can brainstorm that allowed me to I don't know if I would have had that language myself, but what you did is you gave me the overarching umbrella to really talk about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it actually goes into my next question really, really well. I mean, for those people that don't understand that concept, like I am always talking about, don't define yourself by your functional skill, right? If I said I'm a sales trainer, I'm in that category with everybody. If I say I'm a marketing coach, I'm in that category with everybody. So I call myself the rapid growth guy. And it was an ideology I came up with because I realized that there was nothing, like everybody tries to put themselves in a bucket, but then they've got to climb out of that bucket so that they don't have to fight on fees. And for me, that was crazy. So I came up with this whole framework in order to be able to articulate your value very differently. But what was really interesting about you, Justin, is it was a lot easier to do that for you than some of the people that I've worked with because you'd already got out of that box, right? Because what I found with you is you'd already defined an ideology that didn't fit on I'm going to say the e-speaker category list. And I feel like a lot of speakers, they're like, oh, am I a leadership speaker? Am I a sales speaker? Which one of these boxes do I need to fit in so that I can go to bureaus and fit their categories? So I can go to e-speakers and fit their categories. And you didn't do that. You went, really, forget about the categories. I'm going to go out and carve my own path. Did you find that difficult or easy from the beginning? Was that just something you jumped at, or was it something that you feel a lot of speakers are going to really struggle with?
Well, I think for me, going back to when I first started, where my whole business was built on body language. And then what happened is in my development and evolution and my growth, I kept getting certified in communication, right? Emotional intelligence and DISC and Myers-Briggs and all these other topics. But what I realized, what was the unifying thing that tied all of them together? It was, I don't teach people body language about how to read other people. I'm teaching you how to use body language to connect with people more, to build stronger trust in a relationship. Or I teach difficult conversations, but the only reason I teach that is so that you build more trust as a manager or that you build more trust in your marriage. That is why I'm teaching it. So I always tell people, if we strip it all down, if it's not about building trust, I'm not your person, right? But I had to get clear that everything, all of my development, all the stuff I've read, everything that I've done in my life has been kind of leading me to that point to give me, and it gave me a lens to talk about trust that other people did not have. Even other people that talk about trust, who I deeply love, I'm talking about it different than them because my experiences are different. And so that's what I would say for people is to maybe think about their background and what they're really good at and what they want to speak on and what's the unifying thing that it really all comes back to.
I think that's really powerful because I think any speaker that's really, I'm not talking about surviving in the speaking business. I'm talking about mastering it, making a great 6-figure, 7-figure income as a speaker and being able to choose their fees and their rates. They've really been able to say, this is my turf, as opposed to I fit into this category. And the truth is no category can ever define anybody that's listening to this, because you're all a wealth of experience, books, certifications, past customers. I mean, I know, Justin, you have a whole experience in kind of the fast food retail space that, a lot of other people talking about trust just don't have. And the fact is, we can all map our own path. But it does require you to treat your business as a business, right? You can't just expect to put your profile up on an e-speakers and expect people to chase you. You do have to hustle in actually getting some of those relationships and fostering referrals and relationships. And we only have a couple of minutes left, Justin, because I know you've got to go off and do your big keynote to Ford. But if I was to ask the one strategy, if I was a brand new speaker and I was like, all right, I really want to kill speaking this year, but how am I going to get clients? What would be the one thing you would say? Spend more time doing what?
You're either going to love what I say or you will hate what I say. I'm going to say to put performance over content. And this is why I say that. I think every speaker has to have good content. I told you earlier, I think that's the bare minimum. But in my business, when I realized, and I know you used the word entertainment earlier, I think we all have to entertain people. And the thing that I know how to do is to get on that stage and engage people. I know I interview people on stage. I know how to make it interactive in the audience. I think any speaker can get up there and deliver good content. But what is going to separate you from another speaker is your ability to connect and also to make it a performance. Every one of us, performance looks different based on what we can do. So I can't tell you what your performance looks like, but the moment that I focused on performance and really put an effort there, I exponentially increased my fees and my ability to get booked more, because people want to they want good content, but they also want to be entertained. And you got to figure out what is your style of how you entertain people in an authentic way, not in a way that you think you need to do it. And I think that just takes time and practice and what feels right to you.
I think that's a really good advice. I mean, I know for myself, I think the first few years, I kind of protected myself a little bit. I mean, I always said I've got amazing content and I'm a good speaker, and that's all that's required. And it was during COVID where I had to learn to speak in the virtual environment, and I had to be more emotive and engaging to do all those virtuals, that I really came out of that. And it was funny, Deborah, who we've had on the summit as well, she was she told me to update my sizzle reel, because she said, that's not the person I saw from stage. Like, your content was always good, that's why we hired you, but the speaker that we saw was different. And it was because I'd learned stagecraft. And it was funny how the referrals just flew in the moment stagecraft had joined. So I think it's great advice, but don't get on stage unless you got great content too,
exactly.
Right? It should be.
I'm like, please make sure you're hearing me. Great content is the cost of even having your own speaking business, right? But you marry that with really good performance, game changer, because not everyone can do that.
I agree. And I do feel that it's easy to get stuck in that bubble of going, I've got great content. Everyone's telling me I must be so much better at my great content than everyone else. The truth is that nobody goes up to a speaker and says, your content was rubbish. So the fact is that you may have great content. And I hope, I mean, don't get me wrong, there are speakers that have read a few books and now they're speaking on those topics. I'm hoping that that's not you, and you actually have unique points of view to share. But then stagecraft is what's going to get you the ability to share it to bigger audiences, because there's always that event planner that's going to say, is this person going to be bored sitting in the audience? And if the answer is yes, it doesn't matter how great the content is, you're missing the forum to share it because they're not going to book you. Justin, I love the advice you've given people today. For those people that are listening, and I probably should have asked you this before the call, but I know I slammed you in between two meetings and you're off to speak at Ford. But for those people that have questions, or do you mind them reaching out to you? Do you mind them connecting with you? How would you suggest, and what's the safest place for them to reach out to you?
What I love about this speaking world is that we are a family. And so we need people that we can go to say, hey, got a question. How did you do it? So my email is justin@justinpatton.com. And so I always say, or all social media is JP Inspires. So go out there, hit me up as a DM, send me an email. If you have a question, or I don't have all the answers, I have one way that I did it. But if there's something that I can share that'd be helpful, I'm all in. That's what I love about this little family that we're in.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Justin. And I will say that there are many different types of people in the speaking business, but the people that are great at the speaking business, we all get along, because the truth is that we all know that we've got something to learn. And, I don't feel like you've got nothing to add. I mean, I always will ask for advice, but there's always something I can also do to add value. And I find that there are people that feel like they're not part of the club, and that's not how anyone that's part of the club feels, because the club doesn't really have a rope that you have to get past. You just have to come in with that place of abundance and know that you deserve your seats. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And for the people that are watching this, thank you. I hope you got value out of Justin. I know I actually wrote down a few notes myself that I'm going to be applying from like tomorrow. So Justin, thank you so much for sharing, mate. I'm so glad we got to do this today.
Appreciate you.